Welcome. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me well. My name is Aukje Snijders. I work at Royal Dutch Visio, and on behalf of the Inviter team, I welcome you to this webinar. This webinar organized by Inviter. It's a webinar that takes place every 2 months. Usually we have different topics each time, and this time it will be hosted by Visio, and it's going to be a webinar about active learning. There are a few announcements about this webinar. The webinar will be recorded. You are in a Zoom session where your video and microphones are disabled. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A. And if you have any other comments, for example, my sound isn't working, or you can't hear, or someone should speak a little bit louder, please use the chat. If you want to use a screen reader for the Q&A, you can use the basic navigation, tap and enter for Windows, and swipe and tap for iOS. Questions are answered as much as possible at the same time. So if there's a logical break in the presentation, we will collect some questions and answer them at the same time. There are some panelists behind the screens who will be answering your questions if there are any. And our speaker, Martien, will also answer some of the questions in her presentation. And we hope that at the end of the webinar, there's also going to be some time for questions. And we might also be able to give you some opportunity to speak and ask your question live. You can choose your own speaker view in the top right corner. If all is well, only the speaker has his video on, but you can choose in the top corner of your screen how you would like the view to be. So I hope that is enough information from my side. If you want to have auditory tracking during this online meeting, visual images are articulated as well as possible, so the meeting can also be followed even if you only listen. After the meeting, we will send you an evaluation form. You will receive it from Inviter. So we would like to know what you think of the of this webinar. And again, please note that the webinar is going to be recorded. So if you want to share it later with your colleagues, maybe that is also still possible. Then now I would like to give the floor to my colleague Martien, who will be doing this presentation. Martien, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Oh. Hello, good afternoon to you all. I hope you can hear me clearly. I want to thank you for this visiting this webinar today. My name is Martien Rienstra, and I am working as an occupational therapist at Royal Dutch Visio, a center of expertise for people with a visual impairment in the Netherlands. And I work here in a team especially for people with visual and mental disabilities. In this webinar, I want to tell you something about active learning, an internationally used approach to activate children and grown-up people who do not make physical contact with objects and material very easily. So they do not reach or grasp, and they don't explore an object, for example, a spoon or a toothbrush with their hands. This approach, active learning, is mostly used for people with profound intellectual and multiple disability, PIMD, and for young children who are blind or severely visually impaired. Their developmental age is between 0 and 24 months. Oh, so today we will talk about the target group, and we will meet Lily Nielsen. She already died, but I will tell something about her. She's the founder of Active Learning. I will tell you something about active learning in practice. We show you some little movies, and then we will tell you something about the theory behind the approach, and at last, how about the developmentals all around active learning at this moment. I hope you have heard something. And I'm wondering if you think what this is. Maybe we can hear the sound again. I don't hear it very clear, but it is a very familiar sound. And if you could have heard this sound, I'm wondering if you know how it feels, the object that made this sound, and how heavy or light it was. And I'm wondering, because the sound is not so loud, excuse me for that. I'm wondering if you know what you can do with it. Okay, now I explain. We have heard you, let hear you the sound of a keychain. And well, I'm sorry, but it wasn't just the way we want to do it. But if you hear the sound of a keychain and you have already used a keychain a lot of times for open the door or your bicycle or your car, we have immediately a picture of this keychain in our mind when we hear the sound. And we maybe already saw some doors for what we have used it. This is because we have felt a keychain, we have heard a keychain, and we have seen many different keys and keychains in our life. We know how heavy or cold they can feel, and we have seen how they fit in the keyhole or don't fit at all. But if you never had this kind of sensory experience, if you never saw and felt how this key was used, then it is difficult to understand the meaning of a keychain. In my daily practice, I see a lot of people, children and grown-ups, who do not make physical contact with the objects in the world around them. So they can hear the sound of the keychain, but they don't know how it feels and what kind of things you can do with it. So what happens if you can't see the world around you? Not being able to see the nearby space or not being able to see it well enough has a profound impact on the desire to interact with that world. Making physical contact with this world, with the materials and the objects in it, happens much less automatically. There is no visual stimulus to feed the curiosity. And if suddenly some object, for example, a toy, happens to be nearby, then this toy could be something scary. If there are even more disabilities, such as deafness, mental and physical disabilities, interacting with this world around us is getting more and more difficult. So in practice, we see people with less exploratory behavior. Reaching, grasping, and holding objects is much more challenging. It can be scary, it can be physically impossible, and it can be uninteresting. We also see people who need help from others to explore, sometimes 24 hours a day. And if this help isn't there, they become more and more passive. under stimulation, you can call it. And we also see people who explore their own body and clothes, because this is the most familiar to them and always around them. So now I want to show you a movie of Roderick. Roderick is a man of 36 years old. He is almost blind and he has some light perception. He sits in a wheelchair during the day. He has a severe intellectual disability, and this movie is about an empty moment. And there are a lot of these moments during the day for Roderick. I'm stop sharing because we are going to show the movie to you. And there I am again with the PowerPoint. Yeah, I don't know if this Roderick is a familiar person to you all. But this is one of the guys we are talking about when we want to use the active learning approach. So if you don't touch, don't scratch, don't grasp anything, for example, a toy, a spoon, there is a chance that there will be a delay in your development on several areas. In our target group, we observe, for example, a delayed development of gross and finer motor movements. If you think only about all the movements children make when they start to explore the world around them, the whole day is one big sport event, exercising all the muscles and getting feedback from all these movements they make. Our target group doesn't get all these exercises. There is no connection between sensory and motor output. If you don't grasp or touch objects and you only hear the sounds of, for example, the keys you have heard in the beginning, then you only know about one aspect of this key. So that's why there will be a delay in concept development. They don't build a very extensive database of all the things around them. Just a few concepts will be familiar to them. Bodily understanding and spatial relationships will develop less. You have no or less experience of making movements with your own body in this world around you. You don't get any feedback, so you don't get the experience that you can influence the nearby world. You don't get any information about functional actions. For example, that it is you who makes that sound, or that it's you of the tinkle bell, or that it's you who make the scratching sound with the washing up brush. So this is Lily Nielsen, and she is the founder of Active Learning. She developed Active Learning in the 90s. She was a sister of a blind brother, and as an occupational therapist and later as a psychologist, she wrote about her experiences in daily practice. She worked with visually and mentally disabled children in Denmark. And piece by piece, she described her experiences, and so Active Learning was born. In 1996, she received her PhD degree for her research on the little room. And the little room is one of the most is one of the specific materials he created to stimulate exploratory behavior. After this, now we can look to two small movies about active learning in daily practice. We will see Kaya, a woman in a wheelchair with her caregiver Linda. And Kaya gets an activity vest from Linda. And we will see Lois in the little room with her caregiver Anouk. And Anouk brings her to the little room. So I stop sharing again, and Ingen, you can start the videos. So this one was Lois in a little room. Now we will see Kaya in the activity vest. And there we are again. So I think you get a little impression about active learning. In the Netherlands, active learning nowadays is an approach used for persons who do not easily make physical contact with objects and materials. And active learning helps them to discover the nearby world and gives them an opportunity to get involved in that world and interact with it. We use the following definition in the training. I will read, but you can read it by yourself also. To facilitate the client to actively make physical contact with objects, materials, and people through means tailored to the client, with the goal of stimulating and expanding the client's awareness of their options for acting and making contact. Active learning is about bringing objects and materials nearby so that there is something to experience and to explore. The nearby space is adapted to the possibilities of the person. And objects and materials are fixated somewhere in the nearby space. The tinkle bell cannot disappear and it will always be at the same position, so it's easy to find it again and again and again. Some persons will react immediately by throwing away the object that they feel. But in this approach, away is not away, because the tinkle bell will stay in their nearby space. And this will trigger some curiosity in most of the persons. And sometimes it takes a very long time before we see any curiosity. If there are more objects in a nearby space, there will be a bigger chance of physical contact with one of these objects. And this will give direct feedback. Touching, hearing, and moving are combined in this action. This is Little Room, and this is the most famous special material of Nielsen. I think most people associate the Little Room with active learning. Nielsen designed this little house especially for people we are talking about in this webinar. If you are in it, you feel the borders everywhere. And we all know that a border most of the time gives a feeling of safety, comfort, and protection. And furthermore, the movements of the person in the little room will quite often touch the walls and give a tactile response, sometimes also a sound and a visual effect. The sounds you make when you are lying in the little room, you will hear more clearly because of the borders. And often children will experience sounds in this room with their own voice. The objects stay in the same place and will not disappear. And look here, it feels good and safe to have your own place to explore. On the walls, there are different kinds of objects. The left side is different from the right side. Feeling these differences is the start of distinguishing right and left. And this here is an activity vest. We use this especially when persons are touching their own clothes a lot. By giving them this vest, there's more to explore and you can switch the objects easily. Also, here we see that the objects never will disappear and that this person can repeat his action all the time. So in this approach of active learning, we talk about special materials like the little room and activity vest, but another important issue concerns the objects we use in combination with these special materials. And we use daily objects and sensory objects. Daily objects are, for example, the keys, the washing up brush, the spoon and the fork, the cup, the plate, the toothbrush. And by exploring them, these objects give tactile and auditory information. Because the objects are also used in daily life situations, there will be more understanding about the sounds that persons hear when the table is laid or teeth are brushed. So it's better to explore a real keychain than a plastic one. You will hear the real key sound and will feel the cold key. And then when you hear this sound, when the caregiver opens the door, maybe it gives more understanding of the context. And next to the daily objects, we use sensory objects. And we use especially these objects that fits in the pathway of the person. If there is a preference for hard tactile stimuli, then we will place a mirror toy and a chain in the little room. And if there is a preference for the sound, then we will place tinkle bells in the little room. So special materials like the little room bring the room nearby, provide borders and make sure that nothing will disappear. And the objects that are used in combination with special materials facilitate exploratory behavior. So let us now look into the theoretical base of the approach of active learning. How do we know what kind of special materials or objects we must choose to activate this person? And how do we know how to stimulate this person to make physical contact with the objects? There are 3 pillars of active learning, and we need to have more information about all 3 before we can create an active learning surrounding. 1, we need to know more about the person who does not make any contact with his or her nearby space. Let us call him or her Chris. Chris can be a small child with severe visual impairment, or a child or adult with PIMD. Second, we need to know more about the physical surroundings of Chris. Where is the best place to create the active learning surrounding? And third, we have to know more about the interaction between Chris and the caregiver, the parents, the client system, so that we know how to stimulate Chris. And these three pillars work together to create the ultimate active learning situation. In order to find out which possibilities these three pillars can provide in the situation of Chris, we need to have more information, and therefore we fill in an observation form with family and caregivers who know Chris well. So the first pillar, clients, to create the best active learning situation, we need to have more information about the possibilities of Chris. Which sense is the favorite sense? Which sense is the favorite sense? Is it the tactile system or the auditory system? And what kind of motor skills are possible? Is there a possibility to grasp or to hold? Or is Chris perhaps a person that makes more easily contact with objects with his feet? And how about alertness? And what exactly influences the alertness? Is there information about AQ and EQ? And is there information about the balance between these two? Are there favorite toys? Are there favorite moments for Chris? The second pillar is the surrounding, and in the information observation form, we also want to know about the possibilities of the daily surroundings of Chris. So we need to have information about what kind of materials and objects are available, and what kind of lighting is used, and is this lighting appropriate to Chris's visual impairment? Is there a possibility to use special active learning materials, or is it possible to make a specially decorated corner in the group? The third pillar is the interaction. We want to know how we can use our interaction to stimulate Chris in the best possible way. Is Chris a person who needs our full support, or does Chris act more easily when she is alone and we are just in the neighborhood? But also, are we aware of our role in this process? Do we give Chris enough time to react? And do we know how much time Chris needs to react? So after we have filled in the observation form and maybe made some additional observations and tryouts with objects, or maybe we consulted an involved behavioral scientist, we can make a support plan. And this plan is the basis for activating Chris in the next 3 to 6 months. First, we start with a problem statement. This can be, for example, there are a lot of empty moments during the day, or there is stereotypical behavior. The next step is to formulate a goal, as small and concrete as possible and as feasible as possible. So this can be, for example, Chris touches the object 5 times in one session, or Chris explores 3 kinds of objects during one session. You have to make decisions about time, place, and frequency, so that everyone in the team around Chris knows how to play a role in this active learning process. The items on the observation form give you the information about how to create an active learning surrounding with special materials which special materials you can use the best, and what kind of objects are the most stimulating. And yes, it really takes time to become more active. Most persons are not used at all to explore, and the steps we can make in this activating process are small, but also very important. Let us go back to Roderick. We saw him in the beginning, and he was the case study of one of our active learning students named Geke. Geke tried to find a way to activate Roderick with active learning tools, and she made a movie of it. And now we are going to see what Roderick can show us. So I stop sharing, and I ask Inge again to show the movie.
Anja, vind je dat goed? Kun je zelf even gaan voelen? Ik ga achter jou zitten, Roderick.
Thank you, Inge. Yeah, in my believing, this is a very beautiful movie to see how small the steps are and yeah, how beautiful the results can be for Roderick in this case, I think. In the Netherlands, active learning is an active approach inside Bartiméus and Visio, two Dutch centers for people with visual impairments. And there are two publications, one about the theory and the other about the daily practice with tools for implementation about active learning. And both publications are translated in English. On our website, you can download them for free, and also available is in English. In English is the observation form and support plan. We will show you the link later in the chat. We have made here an information film about active learning in Dutch, and that we can watch on YouTube. And we also developed a course for therapists and caregivers who work with people with a visual impairment and a developmental age between 0 and 24 months. Also, we have some contacts in the United States. A few colleagues participated in an active learning course in Dallas, Texas. And active learning has there a very active group of users and supporters. There is a wonderful website with a lot of examples, videos, handles, lists, etc. You can find it on activelearningspace.org. We will also write that link in the chat. We believe that active learning positively influences the activity level of persons because we see this happen in practice and we observe how activation becomes more important in daily care centers when active learning principles are used. Caregivers are motivated and have the tools to design activities for persons with PIMD. For parents and young blind or deaf-blind children, active learning offers handles too and stimulates their babies in developing exploratory behavior. But can we also prove that it works? Can we, for example, measure the effects of active learning? And can we distinguish some factors that make this approach work? Are we offering the right approach or should it be improved? It's high time to do some research. The approach seems to be promising, but until now, there has not been a lot of research on its effectiveness. And last year, Visio and the Academic Collaborated Center for PIMD in Groningen, in the north of the Netherlands, started a research project with the following research goal. We have insight into the effective elements of active learning approach and their relationship with the exploratory behavior of the person with PIMD. So this is about which elements can we observe to be effective in the approach active learning, and which changes can we perceive? Is there maybe a relation between the elements of active learning and the exploratory behavior of the client? We use a multiple case study method for this research. And in the course of 8 months, we are following 4 grown-up clients with PIMD, 8 caregivers of these clients and their activation surroundings. The caregivers follow an active learning training and we collect data on the basis of video recordings and questionnaires. The recordings and the questionnaires will zoom in on the exploratory behavior of the clients, the interaction between caregivers and clients, and the changes in the nearby surroundings. We will expect the results of this research in the summer of 2024. And with the results, we will improve the approach and the course. And we will share the results by publishing them in an international journal. And last but not least, we hope to play a positive role in the discussion about the importance of offering activation to people with PIMD. Thank you for your attention. This was my last slide.
Thank you, Martien. That was really great. I think you have given a really great overview of what is active learning, how it is used in the Netherlands, and really good to see also that there's a lot of research into the workings of active learning and how you contribute to that. So that's really interesting. I have not seen too many questions. I think there was one question. It was in Dutch. Maybe it's nice to translate it. It was not really a question, but it was a comment from someone who actually knows Roderick from one of the locations where she works, and she says it's so nice to see that there were so many small how do you say that, small gains that there were in the past just because of the active learning. So it's really nice to see that this is really effective. I'm wondering if there are any more questions from the people who are listening. I see that there's still quite a few that are there. I don't know if it's possible for people maybe to raise their hands if they want to ask a question so that we can actually give them the opportunity to ask their question live. If there are any questions. No, maybe I have a question for you, maybe Martien. How long have you been working with active learning over the past years, and what is your main, how do you say that, your main, let's say, benefit that you see and that you really want to explore further maybe in the future? Oh, you're muted still. Yeah.
I think I use active learning over about 15 years already. I work 20 years now with Visio. And I see, I see that clients can develop more exploratory behavior, but also I see that caregivers sometimes don't know how to activate clients who are very difficult to activate, or who have not very much possibilities for activating or for handling, for acting. And this method gives concrete information about activities, about how you can put it in the surrounding and take care that it have a very positive effect in this touching and grasping.
Yeah. And so from the people who are now listening to this webinar, there might be also caregivers who are really familiar with the target group, but maybe not so familiar with the active learning approach. You have shown the handbook, right? That is translated by Visio from Dutch to English. Do they have to be trained in a certain way, or can they just also use the handbook to maybe even start working on small things in practice? How can they make use of it?
Yeah, I think the books give handles to use the active learning. I see when we train caregivers, therapists, that the theory behind active learning is get more importance, and little room is used in a lot of day centers I come, and it's you lay the child down in the little room, and then what happens, and sometimes there will be happening something. But for me, it's very important that you know what you do, why you use the objects in the little room, or why you use the little room and not the activity vest, or that kind of thing. So I think a training give you more in-house, give you more
substance.
To use the tools that are in the booklets written. Yeah.
And if they have any questions, can they write to you maybe? If you you can give them some more information. I know that there are also a few of our colleagues also working with active learning in the group here. I don't know if there's maybe one of the colleagues who also, since I'm checking and seeing if there are any further questions. So far there are none. Maybe one of the other colleagues who has some experience with active learning also wants to say something, about what they think is interesting about active learning, or that you maybe want to share some of the results in practice that you have reached, maybe from one of your clients that has stood out. I'm not sure. We didn't practice this. We didn't announce this before the meeting or discuss it before the meeting, but maybe one of the colleagues would want to say something.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm working with active learning now for a couple of years. And sometimes when we want to tell something about active learning, we see that people react, oh, there's so much stuff in the environment. You use so much different materials and so many materials. And that's always a thing that to explain why you are using so many materials. If you only use like 2, 3, 4 objects, clients can't find them, and it takes too long to find them. So they are not active anymore, and they start looking at it. But when you're putting like lots of materials in the environment, they start exploring the environment more. So that's always a question we got. Isn't it too much that you're offering them? And then we say, no, you can just offer a lot that they can really touch it. Maybe Martien, you can say something more about that.
Yes, I recognize the confusion, because we always say you have to look clear to the amount of triggers you give to people, but especially when we work with blind people, yeah, they cannot see the amount of triggers, so only they feel, and if they feel, well, they get a reaction, and there's a feedback of yeah, the things they feel and they hear. So yeah, it will never be a negative response, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Janneke. That was a nice addition.
And
there is a question from Carolina saying, for how long usually a child stays in the little room or has the exploring vest on?
Yeah. Anjoke, would you like to tell something about that?
Yeah, I think it's important that you make an appointment with the environment, and you can put a child every day for a couple of times in the little room. And when they don't like it, they get out of the little room. But my experience is that they're very happy when they're in the little room. And also with a vest, you can say the moments that the child is not doing anything and just sitting, then you put a vest on. And my experience is that children are much happier when there's something to do and they don't have to wait till somebody comes to them and do something with child.
Mm-hmm. So there's not necessarily a limit, as long as the child is comfortable and is happy,
yeah,
and is in a good place, you can keep the vest on or leave the child exploring in the little room.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the most beautiful thing about the little room is that there's a transparent roof, so you can always look if the child is convenient, happy, and feels comfortable. So, and it's also very important that it is the own room of the child, so don't go in there and touch something or make the sound. It's the place from the child of his own. And yeah, I agree your experiences, Anjoke. Yeah, there are wonderful things happening if you are going if you lay down a child in a little room. Yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you, Carolina, for this question. I do not see that there are any other questions. So I think I want to thank Martien for the work and the preparation that she has done for sharing this with our inviter audience. I hope that everybody enjoyed this webinar. As explained at the beginning, the webinar is recorded, so if you want to view it again or share it with your colleagues, please let us know. Again, thank you, Martien, and thank you for all the participants. If there are any questions, maybe later on,